Good morning and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Sunshine Coast Regional District on Thursday, December 11th, 2025. And I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of the Sechelt and Squamish nations. Before we start our festivities here, I'd just like to spare a thought for our colleagues at the Fraser Valley Regional District who are standing up an emergency operations center today, and the folks in the valley there who heard the sirens go off yesterday, the flood sirens in Washington State. So, yes, and the highways are closed. So, but fortunately, we didn't get hit really hard here. So we are all here and ready to go. We have an agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? If none, I'm hoping for a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved, seconded, all in favor? We have an agenda, thank you. And I'd like a motion to receive all reports and correspondence. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. All right, first off, we have a presentation from our delegation from BC Timber Sales. Good morning and welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. See if I pass the first test. Thank you for the invite to attend as a delegate. I am Stacey Gould, Timber Sales Manager for the Chinook business area, and accompanying me today is Todd Monge, Operations Manager.
Good morning.
We like to start our presentations off with this slide, acknowledging the territories in which we work in, which was just done here. BCTS, the Chinook business area, of which I am the timber sales manager of, has the fortunate opportunity to work in a business area where we have approximately 82 First Nations territories. So it's a lot of communities that we engage in, a lot of cultural diversity, and we like to articulate that before we get into our core business. Bit of an agenda here. We have 10 minutes, so it will be quick. We'll give you a high-level overview of BC Timber Sales, provincial operations. We'll talk a little tiny bit about the Chinook business area, who we are, a bit more, and then we'll get into the operational planning referral process, talk about annual timelines associated with that referral process, community engagement, future opportunities, and then there will be time, hopefully, for questions through the chair. So included this slide, not to go through all of the text word by word. We know that it was included in the agenda package. So if you want to read all of it, feel free to cruise the agenda package. Two things that I wanted to point out on this slide. The bottom right-hand corner, BCTS is not a licensee. So we're not an industry player in the sector. BC Timber Sales, BCTS, is a self-financing program within the Ministry of Forests. And I want to talk a bit more about the self-financing piece. So at the top on the left side, you'll see we are a self-financing program. So what that means, not only are we self-financing, but we're a revenue generator. So we're not funded through taxpayers' dollars. We support ourselves, and at the same time, we contribute millions of dollars to the province's general revenue fund to be used for other program areas and infrastructure upgrades, the things that the priorities or the government of the day prioritizes with public input. And I'll leave that slide there, but again, feel free to take a read in the agenda package. So who are we? BCTS Chinook, we spoke about the diversity in terms of Indigenous culture. We're also very diverse in terms of the geography that we work in. So we go all the way up to the top left there in the pink-purple, that's Haida Gwaii, so we have a field team in Dudge and Geeds. And then we also have a field team in Powell River, which is the field team you're likely most familiar with, a field team in Squamish, and a field team in Chilliwack, as well as that's basically where our business hub is in Chilliwack. Together, these field teams manage about 850,000 meters, cubic meters. I know that's probably abstract to most. To try and give you some real context for it, BCTS manages about 20% of the land base in each of our business areas, of which there are 12. So across this geographic these polygons that you see here, we are responsible for managing about 20% of the timber harvesting land base within these areas. What our field teams do, for the most part, is focus on planning and developing timber sales for auction. And of course, with that comes our operating planning and referral process. These can be very detailed and at different levels. So just to pull us up a little bit, I would say the largest kind of strategic engagement point for BC Timber Sales, SCRD, other municipal governments, Indigenous people, and people with just a vested interest in the area. They engage at the Forest Stewardship Plan, which is the high-level plan that sets what we call results and strategies on how we're going to manage identified values. So we can think of an FSP or a Forest Stewardship Plan as the guiding document, legal, that we have to follow in terms of the principles that are laid out for managing these values. And this is at a minimum. Most of the time, BCTS planning and development exceeds those minimum standards, but it's important for folks to understand that that's where they come from. So from that strategic place, we then move into more operational or technical engagement. And now with the new tool that's been developed and legislatively we are required to use, it's called the Forest Operations Map, which you'll hear me refer to as the FOM. This is a legal requirement for public engagement. Indigenous consultation is done through our operating plan process and not through the FOM tool. But the FOM tool, the Forest Operations Map, is where SCRD, folks with a vested interest on the land base, we could say ECA, stream keepers for some local examples, that's where we would be looking for them to engage. When we first launched the Forest Operations Map, or when the province first launched it, we are a user of the tool. We heard back very quickly from folks that it didn't quite meet their test in terms of the information that they were used to receiving under the old format, which was the operating plan format. We have heard that very loud and clear, and the teams have been working very hard to support the FOM with the utilization of what we're calling a web mapping portal, which will allow folks to access the data they're used to accessing, and you will have the transparency that you're used to having through that additional tool. From there, because we are, I would say, in a transition, particularly when it comes to engaging with the SCRD, I want to own and share the accountability with you, or our accountability with you, that we unintentionally jammed Ian and Julie and their team when we moved to this FOM tool. We did not understand the SCRD staff's processes, timelines, and the expectations from the directors well enough to understand what this change meant and what it brought in terms of complexities. So happy to report that our teams are working through that. And this year, the team will walk them through the operating plan to ensure that there is meaningful engagement there. One of the things that we're trying to do as well is become more proactive in our communications, as well as demonstrate on the land base that people who are coming forward and are engaging with us are being heard. A lot of folks don't know, but in the Roberts Creek Elphinstone area, we only harvest half of what we can there, and that started about 15 years ago because of concerns of the harvest footprint on the land base. So we do only harvest half, and what you are seeing in the last, I'll say, 2 to 3 years through enhanced engagement is a large pivot in how we are managing that other half. An example that folks might be familiar with in this room would be TA0519. That is a sale where we wanted to demonstrate that we were hearing folks want to see a lighter footprint. So inside that sale, it's called an intermediate cut, if you want to get fancy with some technical language, but what that means is we're only removing 33% of the fiber in that area, and that's to demonstrate that we have heard it, and it also is an area where we can do this. You can't do that kind of forestry everywhere. Too close. Okay, I'll perfect it right before I'm done. Okay, so let's get into the timeline here and a bit more about the relationship that Todd and Ian are truly leading. Todd being the lead for BCTS and Ian being the lead for SCRD technical staff. So again, we did not understand what this change meant, and so it's been through communication and face-to-face meetings, which are really critical when a relationship is when there's a flare or some tension that is building. So we came down and met, and the SCRT was very respectful and ran us through what the change meant for them, which was really appreciative. And what that did was start us on a better path to repairing the relationship. And it removed any assumptions that were being made. It was not intentional to jam the SCRD. It was not intentional to hold back any information, and we are absolutely making those changes to get the information that folks want, and to do it in a way that helps them. And if this FOM tool isn't helping them in the way they want, then we will figure out another way. And two of those approaches are, again, to sit down with the operating plan January, February, I believe is the plan for the teams to get together. And the operating plan will show 5 years worth of harvest, as opposed to the FOM, the forest operation map, which shows 1 to 2 depending on the area that you're in. Another change that Todd and the team has come to me, I don't know if it came up in conversation or where it came from, but it shows an appreciation and a respect for how much time it takes, especially now that we understand SCRD's process in more detail. Every year, SCRD directors, there's an expectation that their staff will review the operating plan and then provide a report. And there's often a lot of repetitiveness from year to year, and we think that we can help remove some of that and help remove some of the work for the SCRD staff to state those things repetitively by being more proactive in our communications and upfront in writing and in conversation. Say, these are the values that we understand, or your priority values. And if we know an area where it's sticky, we can focus on that and explain or talk through the considerations that have been placed into that planning process, but also be open to listening to considerations that we didn't think of. That's why we're talking. We're stronger, better together than we are independently. So I want to thank Ian and your folks for coming to the table in a very respectful and collaborative space and providing BCTS with some grace in terms of the misstep that we made, acknowledging that misstep and working together to do better. Community engagement and influence on forest operations. So we can talk, I have woven this into some of the slides that I've stated or discussed already. As you can see, we have some postcards here, beautiful local artist, a really fantastic way to get the message out. And I know targeted multiple layers in the provincial government, which is exactly what you should do when you're advocating. I respect that. This group has been, engagement has been quite meaningful. There's been field trips, lots of face-to-face time, and we hear this particular group, the Stream Keepers. And I know that the teams, when they are out there, are very mindful of those concerns. I also understand that there are many people that don't want harvesting at all. And this area is set aside to be timber harvesting land base. So the expectation for us and our teams is that we will harvest here, but there's no expectation in terms of how we do it. And that's where we're trying to focus. We're trying to make forest harvest operations in this area more acceptable and a lighter footprint through the dialogue that we are having with many stakeholders, but one example is the Stream Keepers Society. So future opportunities. I've also talked a bit about this as we've gone through our slides. And I think the future opportunity here is really to get the relationship with the SARD directors and staff at the technical level in better shape, and to live in a continuous environment with that relationship. Society expectations change, directors will change, people on our side will change, but it's maintaining that common thread and not having a relationship rely just on one person, but instead the teams as a whole. And if we had focused on that earlier, we likely wouldn't have had the FOM misstep, but we did, and we're trying to make the best of it. I think in terms of reciprocating, one thing that I haven't heard that I think would be very valuable for Todd and our folks that work with us is to hear more about the SCRD groundwater program. I'm told that you have a lot of data. I know that it is a value of concern, and I think that it would benefit BCTS staff to hear about the data that you have, some of the trends that you're tracking, and get into that valued conversation in a deeper way. And of course, we're always open to ideas on how we walk this path forward together. And I do expect the teams to challenge each other in a good way on how we can continue to look for future opportunities and advance our mutual objectives in our areas. And that's it.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open the questioning with a question of my own. We have a communications protocol that was signed in 2014, which is, I think, 3 boards ago. And my question is, what has changed since 2014 in terms of BC Timber Sales mandate? And is this protocol still relevant, or do you think we need to revisit it?
Thank you for the question. Good question. There's actually been a lot that has changed since that communication protocol was signed. When the Powell River team signed that communication protocol, they were actually with a different business area. They were with Strait of Georgia. They moved over to Chinook in 2016. And then since then, there haven't been, other than the FOM legislation change, there hasn't been a lot of, I'll say, policy or legislative change. We're working towards the intent. When we first met with Ian and Julie, just a handful of months ago, a few months ago, again, it came up. Is this relevant? Is it stale? We did agree. However, in the room on that day, we agreed that our priority should be understanding each other's processes and supporting the SCRD in a way that allows them to meet SCRD directors' expectations. And then once we have space to step back from that, we can reconsider amending or updating the communication protocol.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up question. Does BC Timber Sales have a lot of communications protocols across the province, or is this a little unusual?
This is unusual, in a good way.
Okay. I am looking to directors. Director Stanford.
Thank you. I can hear that you're working on protocols and better communication and structure with the board and the SCRD. I am getting a lot of feedback from my community about how do they affect change directly. And they're specifically looking at the impacts of forestry on storm surge, runoff primarily. They how do they get their voice across in the most effective way? And how do you respond back to them? Like, what is the process apart from the SCRD through to local communities?
Okay, thank you. So one of the ways is near the end of your question, what you touched on, right? The constituents could bring their concerns to you, and then they could come through you to us. The other way is the forest operations map. So that is a tool which is it's posted generally annually for us, and it will be coming out this year in January or February. In addition to using that tool, one of the requirements is that we post in local newspapers to try and let folks know that this is what we are doing. I'm not sure, are we sending letters out to folks that we're aware of that want to engage, to encourage them?
Yeah, maybe I can jump in there. I think there's sort of two answers to your question there. One is sort of operational, and one is sort of larger, more strategic, and potentially legislative. On the operational side, one of the things I'd sort of like to start to say is that it might feel like there hasn't been a lot of impact already on our operations, but it has actually been very significant. You look at the design of our blocks and how we're harvesting, much of that comes directly from what we've heard from the community in this area. I think we certainly face a challenge in the direction we're coming from. I think success for a lot of people means no harvest, and that just simply isn't an option for us. But like Stacy said, we can affect how we harvest and how we do that and have a lighter footprint. So there's been a lot of positive effect, at least in my opinion, from the engagement that's already happened. The forest operation map, like Stacy said, is sort of the primary sort of gateway into communicating with us. Anyone has the opportunity to comment on the forest operation map, which will go up every year. This year, it should be coming out right around March 1st. In addition to that, we have our general mailbox for the Powell River team, the Sunshine Coast team. Any email that goes there will read, action, and respond. And then in addition to that, we generally proactively reach out if people send us a comment. We respond as much as we possibly can, and I think in almost every instance we do, at least to start the conversation and see where that goes. So I think, in my opinion, that's sort of the best way to do it, because that's where you're having the most effect on the operations on the ground. The larger legislative policy, that's generally out of sort of our purview here within Chinook and within the Sunshine Coast field team.
Thank you. I'm going to recognize Director Bax.
Thank you. I don't know if my camera's on or can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you.
Oh, really? Thank you. I understand that you're trying to change the way that the BC Timber Sales is trying to change the way things are done. I've had some discussions with the past president of the Trucker Loggers Association, and he told me that they were concerned about the rules and regulations around harvesting, and that they had very little freedom to change the methods of harvesting. I wonder, has that changed with this new outlook on harvesting, or is there a different way that the forest is being logged?
Knowing the Truck Loggers Association, TLA, they represent largely contractors and licensees, so forest industry. So we operate under, because BCTS is not a licensee, but we still have to follow all of the rules. We do have the same legislative play space. We have all of the same legislations to follow, all of the same rules, conformance and enforcement, all of that. So I think what I would say, if I could toot our horn a little bit, is that pivoting in forestry is a spectrum. And there are some entities that are not choosing to pivot, or some that are choosing to kind of pivot, and there are others that are choosing to demonstrate that the public is being heard in a bigger way. And the folks that are demonstrating that they have heard the public are changing the way they do forestry. But that's not a legislative requirement. So not knowing some of the context behind those comments, I can't get into it. What I can say is the kind of forestry that we operate in Roberts Creek, Elphinstone area, is not the kind of forestry you will see in every area of our business area. And so that's what we mean by light touch. And I get that it can be personal. I can think something's light touch. Somebody can walk into it and think, this is not light touch. This isn't what I want to see. But we are trying to change the way we do forestry, but that is not because of a legislative change.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Director Dandrad, alternate Director Dandrad.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to engage with BCTS. I'm the alternate director for the SRD, but I'm also a counselor for the town of Gibsons. And just answering your question, the town of Gibsons has been monitoring our aquifer for over a decade. So we have been doing a lot of studies. And recently, perhaps in the last 2 years, we even extended monitoring up like outside the boundaries to better understand Mount Elphinstone as a system, because the town of Gibsons depends 100% of the aquifer for our drinking water. So we understand that it's a very complex system, the way water infiltrates and is stored. And also there's another aquifer there too. It's not only the Gibsons and the other ones, but there's a Capilano that is a different system. I'm sure you are aware. It's a non-confined aquifer. So we have been working with hydrogeologists for over a decade. And when the report that came to us in 23 by Polar Geoscience, one of the concerns that the town had along with the stakeholders was that there has been hydrological studies, but not hydrogeological studies, which is quite different because one deals with surface water, the other is dealing with really understanding how the water infiltrates into the system. And one of the characteristics too, it takes about 9 years for the water to come from Elphinstone to the aquifers. That's what we understand now. This could change. And so far in the last 10 years, the aquifer has been behaving really well because we have not had really too many impacts in the area. But we have huge concerns because, first of all, anything that happens there, we won't feel necessarily right away. But by the time we feel something, there's no quick remedy. Any remedy will be decades to come. And so there are other concerns as well that I'm sure the stream keepers brought up. But I think one of my questions is we have asked for these studies. And does BCTS has the power to do the study? And what is stake? I'm just curious because it's over 2 years.
Thanks. So, yeah, groundwater for us, I will say, is out of scope. But Todd will get into some of the considerations, and this is also why I was asking. You brought up reciprocity, right? For us to better understand the work that you're doing. So, if we want to talk just strictly by legislation, groundwater is out of scope for us, but we want to learn from you. Surface water absolutely is. And that's why you see the report that you have in front of you. That report, I'm not sure if folks know, again, this speaks to how strong of an advocacy community you have here. That report that was done is touted in BC as the best hydrological assessment forestry has done. So that's where we focused our energy, But that doesn't mean that we can't open up other conversations, and I'll hand it over to Todd for that.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I think one of the things in our conversations with Ian and Julie and their team that came forward was really the priority of the district here, and groundwater was sort of put to the top of that list for sure. I think one of the directions we went with that conversation is what we can affect and what we can't. For us, all of our focus really is on surface and groundwater, either surface water and its effect on groundwater. That's why we did the hydrology surveys, and like Stacey said, have been endorsed sort of across the board. What we recognize is that we are not set up as an organization to lead a study around aquifer recharge, and those types of scenarios. But where our conversations, I think, have the opportunity to go is how we could contribute to that type of survey. We are absolutely open to looking into how what we're doing does impact and affect the aquifers. It's not that we're opposed to contributing in that way. It's just we're not the agency that's set up to do that.
Thank you. Thanks for the answer. In this regard, is it possible that you halt the operations until we have the study completed?
We get asked to pause often. Because we only harvest half of what we can in this area, and you've been tracking groundwater for 10 years, okay, and it looks like it's doing okay. We've been active in this area, harvesting a lot longer than 10 years. So not understanding the details, and I get sometimes the devil's in the details, to me that's an indicator of positivity. So I don't want to lose that. But again, the devil can be in the details, and this is where the conversations are really important. But no, I cannot pause. We can continue to listen, and we can continue down the light footprint, already only harvesting half, and then removing less, we call basal area, really it's trees, removing less trees, leaving more on site. We can do those things, but we cannot pause. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of citizens in our province that rely on the work that we do for their work. All of our planning and development is contracted out to the public, from laying out our blocks, from helping us find our blocks, to building the roads, to deconstructing the roads, and then to harvesting. BCTS is of particular importance when forest industry, when markets come down and the licensees who have a different business structure see their profit margins shrink. They will generally tailor down, meaning the contractors that they're using are often out of work or have less work. This is when BCTS becomes even more important, because what we see are their contractors will often navigate over to our work. So we are a very big indicator of jobs, direct and indirect. So that's one reason. The other reason is because it's part of the timber harvesting land base. If you wanted to advocate for a land-based change, and I've provided folks in the audience with how to do that and the proper contacts, but that wouldn't be done through BCTS.
Thank you. I'm going to take advantage of my position and jump in here. The letter that we have from you in our agenda package says that our planning includes hydrological assessments and monitoring aligned with professional standards and watershed recommendations. So yeah, I've been up, I've seen the cut block that you have going right now on Mount Elphinstone. So what monitoring is planned, and for how long, and who's doing it?
Great question. So there's a number of different types of monitoring. There's the operational monitoring that goes along with our conformance program to make sure that all of the sort of technical specifications in and around the prescription around the harvest, the follow-up, and the silviculture, the replanting of the blocks are maintained. That's ongoing. That should be ongoing for the next 3 to 5 years. As a function of that as well, that would be looking at things that directly affect groundwater, such as runoff, making sure that the water on site has been managed properly. There's another piece to that for our block that we haven't harvested yet up there, in which we're doing monitoring on Roberts Creek. Part of our plan there is to monitor both beforehand, during, and after, to see how much sediment is actually making it and being transported in the river itself.
Thank you. All right. Director Bax.
Yeah, thank you. I think my community's made it abundantly clear that they're quite unhappy with the status quo. And we're very much hoping to see change within the way that things are done, recognizing that there are, in your conversations with the stream keepers, I'm sure they've made it very clear that the creek known as Roberts Creek is a very, very valuable creek to the salmon population here on the Sunshine Coast, and there's incidents of people's wells turning getting sediment in their drinking water now, just below cut blocks, and there's a history of flood damage that's happened that's been directly linked to logging operations, and we hope that this isn't just empty talk, and that that the changes will take place, and there will be. We're just looking to protect our community and to keep what great beauty we have in our natural environment for future generations. And as we become better known to the Lower Mainland and the world as a place for great ecotourism, the change needs to take place, that we exploit these natural spaces for what they are, and the trees are becoming more valuable in the ground rather than cut and used. I'm not against logging. I just think that we need, as our community grows and the interface with the forest comes closer, we need a buffer. We need to be able to have our waters remain clean and have our stormwaters not overwhelm us. But I wonder, why is there viable logging further away from my community than some of the cut blocks that have been proposed?
Thanks for the question. I'll start high level, and then Todd, if you have anything to add. We saw the second or third slide, the geography that is Chinook. So, I mean, that's a big area. There are other areas that we could go to. But what that would mean is we are taking the harvest that is supposed to occur here, and we're moving it somewhere else. So we're not sustainable in the other area, because now that area is expected to be harvested twice as much to make up from where we would not be harvesting. And in terms of that being a good ethical decision for a professional, I would, speaking for myself as a professional, I would not advocate for that. We need to balance the harvest across the landscape, and that is one of the principles that we go by. Already going down to harvesting only half of what we can means that we have taken that half that we're not getting from here, and we've had to sprinkle it around in other areas of Sunshine Coast. So there are impacts to not harvesting somewhere, which is why we have chosen to continue harvesting here. The expectation is that we will, and we have changed. Is the change done? No. Can we do better? Always. We live in a continuous improvement environment. I did hear you mention some data for the Roberts Creek or Elphinstone area that links or details in a scientific way that harvesting is responsible for water quality concerns. If you could share that, that would be incredibly valuable for us.
Yeah, I'll jump in quickly as well. I think what you're really getting to in the first part of your comment is around social license and the social license that we have here. And what we've really tried to focus on is trying to understand that message, and I can really honestly say that it resonates well with us. Like, we understand and have heard the comments that we've gotten from community up and down the Sunshine Coast, and have invested heavily in getting down on the ground and talking to people, and then incorporating that into our operations. The short answer is like Stacey said, by reducing cut, we've already taken a bunch of that volume away. But in addition to that, because of the opportunities around how we can harvest here, and some of that being, the opportunity being because of the proximity, means that we can do some of these lighter touch types of harvesting, also contributes to that as well. So it's not just moving away, but it's also impacting how we do the harvest, that has a lot of positive impact on sort of that proximity between sort of recreational infrastructure, for example, and our cut blocks. I think one of the things that we also understand is that social license takes quite a long time to build, and that we're really sort of starting afresh here, and it's going to take a while for us to build it. That's part of why we're here today, and part of why we're investing so heavily in speaking to the people on the Sunshine Coast and the folks who are living in the communities like our staff do, and recreate in the same places and in the same ways. So it's important to us as well.
Thank you. Director Lee?
Thank you, Chair. My area actually is Pender Harbor, so I'm kind of interested in, you did some harvesting up in the Egmont area a few years ago. I thought it was fairly well done. The one thing that was missing was the lake quality testing. You did a hydrology study, but you didn't check the lakes before and after and long term. Is that going to be part of the future testing?
I can, okay. You can feel free to fill in any gaps I missed. So Egmont, that is actually not BCTS's one of our operating areas, though that harvesting was done in collaboration with Shuswap Nation, and that is their operating area. So unless we enter into that kind of partnership again, you won't see BCTS in that area. Now, that said, we are looking at doing some interesting things in other areas, and I'll let Todd talk to that.
Yeah, I won't get really into too many specifics on that, but I will say is that's the type of thing that we would be open to in the future, even though, like Stacey said, that's not our operating area. If we were operating in an area that had those types of concerns brought forward to us by the community, or we recognized some risk there, it's absolutely something we would look into as a part of our operations.
Yeah, there is actually a cut block proposed up behind my Haslam Lake water supply, so we can talk later about that. That was my second question, is when we have concerns like that, I believe it looks like I would go to the Powell River office and say, hey, what are you doing with this and that? Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. Yeah.
Okay. I have more questions, but I'll wait my turn.
Okay, Director Drandrad.
Thank you, Chair. Disregard the water sustainability plan. I know the community and organizations here in the town of Gibson's SCD has asked that to the ministry, but I believe it's pending. And I think my understanding is the BCIT has also committed, but my question is, would you help us to speed up the process? Do you have any way of doing that so we can get in your relationship with the Ministry of Forest?
I would say we have very little influence over, we call them WSPs. I only know of one in the province on the island. I can tell you that we have a phenomenal planning officer, Sydney, who some folks know. She has supported some of the work. They are looking at doing some of the similar things that we have done. An example is the hydrological assessment that we did for this area. I have relayed personally to Minister Randine Neal that BCTS would support that project, but it is not under our mandate. So if Walrus or Waterlands Resource Stewardship decides that this is a priority area for that project, we are absolutely willing to be at the table.
Thank you. I personally would really value doing a workshop with BC Timber Sales because I have a ton of questions. I could go all morning, including about replanting, because I've been hiking through some of the replanted cut blocks up there, and I have a ton of questions about how replanting is changing. We're very concerned about water and stormwater here for many obvious questions, such as the flooding of the highway yesterday. But there's also concerns about fire smart protection, and whether BCTS is leaving behind piles of slash, things like that. So I'm hoping that perhaps we could get together for a workshop in the new year and sit down and do some planning, because we need more data, and the data needs to be publicly accessible about hydrology and the behavior of our watersheds. You're now logging in the recharge area for the Gibson's Aquifer and are about to start logging in the recharge area for the Langdale Aquifer. And so the public is understandably really concerned. Who else has questions? Director Lee, did you want to go with one more?
I'm kind of the opinion you are. I could ask questions all day. I was a retired logger, so the practices were sure a lot worse when I was young. You're making progress, which is good. And I'm very interested to see how you could selectively log and actually make money. So that's something I'd like to see, even if you do it just as a trial and don't make money, just to see how it works. That's something we should be doing. But I keep getting the comments is that there's more harvesting happening here in the Sunshine Coast than has ever happened before. And I was wondering if you have any data, overall data, on how you would either confirm or deny that comment.
So BCTS, the Sunshine Coast team, is pretty steady Eddie. So there, if anything, because of timber supply reviews, so another very high-level process, Office of the Chief Forester runs timber supply reviews, and at the end of that process, they tell us what the land base can handle in terms of harvesting. So those have been coming down because of increased management objectives and the diversity of them, not just for timber. So we are seeing it come down because of that. So saying we're steady Eddie, we are steady Eddie in terms of achieving our apportionment, if you will. Industry in the last 10 years on Sunshine Coast has absolutely, harvesting has declined for sure. A solid example of that would just be the exiting of Inter4, right? Inter4 has not been active for a while. Their licenses are being subdivided and sold off. And so the Sunshine Coast right now is seeing a reduced harvest rate. It could be perhaps what they're seeing is the locations are maybe in a more visual place, because nobody really wants to be visual. If we could stay at the back end of a valley and keep the peace that way, we would prefer to do that. But because of old harvest practices, and we're largely in second rotation timber now, we are more visible with where we are. So I suspect that's likely going on.
Thank you. And TA 0519 is one of the most visible cut blocks out there and the new sort of experimental or new approach cut block. So can we expect updates on that in over the next few years?
Yes, I should have also said earlier on, we are pivoting. However, we work with the community forest here, Sari Saunders. So in many, not all, but in many of the harvest blocks that we have, particularly the new ones where we have much higher retention since we've started to pivot, we have research plots in those that were designed by the research team and monitored prior to harvest and will be monitored post-harvest, and we will be reporting out on those, and those data will be publicly available. I should also say the intermediate cut or the commercial thin, which we're not supposed to call it, but is very close to, that's the first one that BCTS has done in the entire province. And it was done here because of the values and the strong advocacy that comes from this community. So thank you for that. Thank you for helping us change.
Thank you. I see Director Bax.
Yes, thank you. Couple of questions. So when we're looking at a cut block, is there transparency about the economics of this cut block in comparison to other cut blocks? If there's money being made and how much money is being made. And another question is, what's the end use of most of the stuff that we are pulling out of the forests?
Thank you. So all of our auctions for our timber sale licenses are publicly viewable online. So you can see where we set, we call it the upset rate. Essentially, it's where bidding begins. We don't have a lens into profit margins or the business models that licensees use. You can make the assumption that largely, if they're bidding, they see profit in the volume. Now, there is an exception to that in that some licensees will not tool down or slow down when the market comes down. They will continue to operate at a loss and waterbed that. But not everybody does that. So there could be a sale or two that a licensee holds. They want to keep folks working, but that one isn't going to be profitable. But at the end of the year, they will all be profitable. And I can't speak to that because I don't know their business models. But certainly, BCTS is not in the business of trying to bankrupt somebody. We have a lot of conversations and submissions to Treasury Board, and we are expected to generate revenue for the province. So we can do things like the intermediate cut where it will likely be revenue neutral. That's okay. That's okay. People are working. Tax is being received by the province. Restaurants are being propped up by servicing the folks that are doing the work. So there are other tangible benefits than just revenue that we do need to be aware of. But I mean, we also, again, don't want to bankrupt somebody, and we don't want to invest a lot of money into something that we don't think is going to auction well. There was a second question. Oh, the end. Okay. So yeah, it really depends. BCTS, we offered 10% of our volume to value add industry. That has doubled since the BCTS review, so we now offer 20%. So, and there is a specific registration process that these value-add manufacturers have to go through, which includes mill visit, looking at number of employees, looking at outputs, those kinds of things. Along the Fraser River, there's 200 plus of these value-add manufacturers, so they absolutely look to BCTS volumes to help prop that up. At the same time, we have logs that go down to the Vancouver log market, and then we have logs that go to local mills. So it's a variety.
Thank you. I'm going to take 2 more questions, and then I think we need to wrap because we have an agenda, and our 10-minute delegation is at an hour now. So I will recognize Director Inkster, and then after him, 1 more question from Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I like the workshop idea and the need for more information and discussion. Every time a proposal comes to this board and/or information on a cut on the Sunshine Coast, there's noticeable discomfort at this table, and a lot of questions, some questions left without answers on those issues presented. So I would look to you as chair as to where we would go forward, you as chair, and to the chair of the board as to how we would deal with these issues that keep coming up. Thanks.
Can I make a quick comment on that? Just in terms of how we're starting to work with Ian and team here, there's been acknowledgement of that exact issue, and that what we've done is taken a look at both how the sort of Ian's team and the SCRD and BCTS are providing information back and forth to each other. And one of the things that we actually realized is that we're sort of missing a little bit in terms of when we're providing the information and where it has most value to each party. And so what I mean by that is that we've been giving our 5-year plan, and from our understanding of how Ian's team digests and reports back to the board is at that 5-year level and everything below it. Well, that's where we're in our sort of operation and planning the least granular. That's where we know the least detail, where we have the most likelihood of things shifting. And so where we start to get really specific in our operations, how we're going to move and what's actually going to be harvested in the next year or 2 is at that year 1 and 2. So coming to that realization between our 2 teams, I think, was critically important. And I think as our conversations progress over the coming months, I think one of our aims is to try to align those 2 things so that we can provide the information to Ian and his team so that it comes to you in a way that gets the information that you need to be able to have these conversations.
Thank you. Director Lee has passed, so last question to Director Bax.
Sorry. Thank you. So in the Polar report, it was recommended that the Ministry of Transport and Transportation assess the culverts within the cut block areas. I've heard that there has been yet no response from the Ministry of Transport and Transportation. Do you know if the work that they are supposed to do in assessing the culverts, which are very important in our stormwater runoff, have they been assessed and given the go-ahead for the work that BC Timber Sales is expecting to be done within these cut blocks?
Sure, I think there's a jurisdictional divide here that is important. The culverts that are addressed in the in Lars's in Polar's report are actually Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, so they're not in the timber harvesting land base. They are on Modi roads. And so the recommendation was to ensure that BCTS make sure that Modi is aware of the report and is aware of the recommendation to assess those culverts. I can tell you that Modi has assessed those culverts. I do not know what the plans are, but we made sure that Modi had that information. I do not have, BCTS does not have jurisdiction on highways, but we do in the forest and on Forest Service roads and the culverts and infrastructure there. Modi does not. So just want to make sure that distinction between our responsibilities is clear.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming today. It was a good opportunity to ask a lot of questions we have. As I said, we would like to keep going. So perhaps we can have staff arrange a workshop with local governments in the new year. And so, thank you again, and then we're going to, I think, take, okay, I move that staff invite BC Timber Sales to do a workshop with local governments in Q1 2026, is that, or Q2? 2026. Seconder, thank you, that's seconded. Any nitpicking? No? Okay. I call the question, all in favor? Thank you. All right, thank you. I'm going to take a 5-minute break and we'll be back at 10:36. Welcome back to the Committee of the Whole meeting, fondly known as COW, for December the 11th, 2025. And the next item on our agenda is 4.1, a report on emergency siphon system use. And over to our GM of Infrastructure Services.
Good morning, committee. Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to receive board direction on how to advance with the emergency siphon systems currently located at Edwards Lake and at Chapman Lake. Both siphon systems, in order to maintain their operations, we need approval from both BC Parks as well as Ministry of Water, Land, and Resources Stewardship. And currently all the required permits to continue to have those siphon systems in place and use them are expired. And we still have them at the lakes based on a additional agreement with BC Parks. BC Parks also indicated that they would like us to take them out, remove them this summer if no long-term agreement has been reached with the Sechelt Nation about their use. So staff are seeking board direction on how to advance with these siphon systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Director Gabius.
Yeah, not a question, sorry. I would like to suggest something. I'm going to hold off putting the motion forward because that would end the discussion, but I would suggest that we refer that, and that's not a motion right now, but that we refer that to the January 22nd Committee of the Whole meeting, pending a discussion that we have scheduled with the Sechelt Nation. I would like to have a more holistic conversation with the Sechelt Nation before making the decision. So just giving a heads up, I don't want to stop the discussion, but that's a motion I would like to put forward a little later.
Director Inkster.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just my question to us is, if we're having that meeting, will this come up? I mean, sometimes we have those meetings and those issues don't come up. We talk about other things. So are we making sure that that discussion piece is on the agenda then for the discussion?
Who are you asking? Because I don't know the answer.
Well, I would ask through you, I guess, to Director Gabias.
Yeah, I guess that would be up to us to make sure that that's covered.
Good. Well, I have a question for staff, which is, in the case of an extended drought, we still need the siphons in order to be able to get water out of the lake. And we are legally required to maintain the environmental flow. What happens if we can't maintain the environmental flow? Like, what, do we all get thrown in jail? Like, what happens?
Thank you for the question. I think it all depends on the circumstances. We have a regulatory responsibility to maintain 2 liters per second in the creek. If we're not able to do so, it will completely depend on the severity and the length and the potential impact to fish and fish habitat to confirm what's next. If there is, it also depends on if let's say, if we've been using a lot of water for community water supply early in the season, and as a result of that, there is no water available anymore to provide the event later in the season, it might be a different conversation than if that would not be the case. If there would be fish and fish habitat impacts, of course, Department of Fisheries and Ocean Fisheries Act would be very interested, and because we would be in non-compliance with the Federal Fisheries Act, and that would that might then have all kind of further implications. But it would totally depend on the circumstances at that time, what the implications could be. But from a regulatory perspective, we would be in non-compliance with our water license. But what the implications of that would be I cannot foresee that at the moment.
Do you want to go? Director Lee.
Yes, I do have a question in that when we get into discussions like this between the nation and the water suppliers, there's quite a bit of considerations, and well, fish is one of them. It's also, if we get a fire in the interface or large structure fires, which are things that you simply can't plan for, we also need a fallback at that point. So those are all things that need to be considered when we're talking about this. I don't know how the nation staff and the SCRD staff get on the same page to talk and advise each of the appropriate boards, other than if we do this. That's why I'm just wondering if we want to put it off or not.
That wasn't exactly a question. That was, I think, a reflection, yes.
Something to think about before we decide. Maybe Tina could help us with that.
Questions? Motions? Director Gabius.
I guess now is the time. So yeah, I would like to put forward that this item be referred to the January 22nd Committee of the Whole meeting, pending an upcoming conversation with the Seychelles Nation.
Is there a seconder? Yes, that is seconded. Thank you. Any further speculations, comments, reflections, questions? I'm not hearing any, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? That passes. Thank you very much. And we move on unexpectedly quickly to the Chapman Creek. Yes. Oh, I apologize. There was one opposed. I do entirely. It passed, yes. But would you like your opposition recorded? Okay. Apologies, I forgot to call for the opposition, and it's bad chairing on my part. So, Chapman Creek Water Treatment Plant UV upgrade, over to Manager Waldorf.
Thank you, Chair. Report before the board today is just requesting a adjustment to the maximized authorized amounts on the contracts for the consulting and also the construction. For the upgrades to the UV at the Chapman Water Treatment Plant, the adjustment to Stantec's contracts is to facilitate some preemptive engineering work that's likely to reduce any extras during the construction phase of the project. Hence the positive value of Stantec's adjustment and the reduction in the expected contract price. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. And Manager Waldorf actually got to my question, which we usually see, modest increases, but we never really see the reduction to offset. So I appreciate that the funding envelope's the same. I'm going to move the recommendations as presented on page 1 of the report.
And I see a seconder. Are there any further comments? Not seeing any. Calling the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes. Thank you very much. Analysis of cost controls and financial oversight, and over to our CFO or CAO. I'm not sure which.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to provide the board with a few options related to a motion that was passed in July as a sequence of cost overruns with several projects and contracts had been presented to the board over the prior couple of months. And so staff did an analysis of various options and have put forward some recommendations for consideration, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And looking for questions, Director DeAndrade.
It's not really a question. It's just I was pleased to see this report because in face of all the increasing costs of everything, especially construction, which leads to cost of infrastructure, and the reports that have and people's anxiety of increased taxes, I love the approach that the board took and staff. So congratulations to both of you, because we don't track, we don't manage. I love tracking things because when you track, you really get surprised of things that you had no clue. So I think this is a very positive move.
Director Inkster.
Thank you, Chair. When I look at this proposal and, more scrutiny over our operations to make sure that we have a representation of the spend of the decision previously made, the only question I would ask, though, is if we spend $250,000, will we gain and or save $250,000?
Does staff want to comment?
At least.
Well, the proposal was approved in last year's budget, so this is a project carryover, and because of vacancies, hence like not replacing the CFO and other vacancies within finance, that project has been delayed. And so when staff were doing an internal scan of, what do we have in our existing toolbox, this was identified as one of those areas that we could influence the scope to enhance some of the reporting tools and some of the pinch points internally that we're having that we don't have tools currently. So we haven't done an analysis, and that could be part of that work with any potential contractors, because we haven't selected or even engaged in selecting a software yet. So we could continue to assess what that would impact. But, things like catching things in advance, commitment accounting, those types of things that we don't currently have in place to support project leads, and communicating is one of the areas that we saw could see improvement. And so if we catch something early, for sure, but whether or not it directly correlates to a one-on-one in cost savings, we don't have that information yet.
Thank you. And I would say that there are potential cost savings by putting better processes in place to catch mistakes before they cost us money. Director Inkster.
Obviously, as the CEO indicated, this was already budgeted, part of a previous plan. I appreciate the explanation as to how where this could go. It's not good enough for me, so I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
All right. I am fully supportive of this. I think both staff and the board have really been struggling with the number of projects that we have and how to get them completed and how to track them. And as directors, we usually only hear from the public when something goes wrong, which gives us a bit of a skewed view of how things are going sometimes. I see Director Stanford.
I just wanted to move the recommendations as presented.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any further comments, suggestions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Everybody's hands went up. That was good. So thank you very much for that. And next up is 2026 board appointments. I hope everybody read this very carefully to see what you are signing up for the year. And Deputy Corporate Officer.
Thank you, Chair. So staff are bringing forward the board's liaison appointments, as we do each year, to ascertain whether any changes are desired in terms of which directors represent the SCRD at the various committees, commissions, and boards. These organizations do sometimes experience change in terms of how they're composed, their names, how many appointees they ask for, things of that nature, and some appointments are set by virtue of being designated as the board chair. Staff are confident, though, that this list before you is accurate and up-to-date as possible and are ready to make updates as you see fit. I'd suggest going line by line so we don't miss anything, and happy to answer any questions along the way. Thank you.
All right, well, if we go line by line, we have PTAC. I'm happy with PTAC unless anyone else wants to be on it. And Director Lee looks happy too. POMO. Okay, all happy in POMO. Joint Use of Schools Steering Committee. All good. Fire Commission is legislated. I'm happy with the library if all are happy there. Keep an eye on Kelly in case he waves. Okay. Director Stanford.
I just wanted to point out that I am alternate for the library. I haven't attended those meetings. They are particularly awkward for me to attend. But if you are happy as the appointee that I continue to be alternate, then I'm okay with it.
I'm fine. I don't mind the 6:30 on a Monday night time slot. Seashell Public Library. Okay, Director Gabius. Municipal Finance Authority, I believe, is that one legislated?
Thank you for the question. It's not legislated, however, it has been the SCRD's practice that it is the chair and vice chair.
Are the chair and vice chair happy with MFA? Okay. Wonderful. MIA. I'm feeling a bit guilty about that one because they have an annual meeting at UBCM, and between cabinet minister meetings and other events at UBCM, I think I have only made it once. I don't know if anyone else is interested in taking on MIA.
If I may, Chair, I was contemplating volunteering for this one because sure, why not? But then looking back, at least for 2025, the MFA and the MIA meetings end up scheduled like in two different places back to back. So they actually can't be the same people because you can't physically get from one meeting to the next with the way they're scheduled. So I can't do it.
Cool. That's very sneaky. Director Stanford.
I'm okay about volunteering, but the meetings are at UBCM or
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
That works. Yes, I can volunteer for that.
That's wonderful. And I would be willing to be alternate unless Director Gabius wants to do it. Okay. That would be great. It's a wonderful organization. I feel like I should pay more attention. ICE-T, Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. It says here board chair per ICE-T terms of reference. The trust is looking at a change so that it doesn't need to be the board chair. I didn't get a chance to confirm whether that change has actually happened yet or not. I am happy to continue attending.
Great. Thank you. AVICC, Committee on Solid Waste. I'm happy there right now. Anyone else into solid waste? Okay, if we're good on that one. House Sound Ocean Watch Action Network, Director Stanford, okay. Youth Action and Awareness, Director Bax, are you happy to continue with that one?
I will continue with that. I haven't heard from them about the scheduling for their meetings, and I'd be very interested in hearing that.
Thank you. And talking of scheduling of meetings, when was the last time the District of Sechelt Liquid Waste Management Plan Steering Committee met?
Don't look at me, I'm not the liaison.
That perhaps we could ask the District of Sechelt when they're going to have another meeting.
We will do that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Because it's important. Director Toth?
Thank you. If I recall correctly, part of the liquid waste management plan, the invite to the SCRD is for adjacent areas. So it's only ever really going to make sense for the area B and D representatives to be the appointees from the board, just because it is intended for the neighboring jurisdiction. So really, it's whether Director Bax and Director Gabius are happy in the roles they're in for the never they're asked to attend a meeting.
Okay, but does that not include, is the scope not including the septage receiving facility?
My understanding is that the septage receiving facility is undergoing a separate process right now for future planning. Like, it's not part of my understanding is that it's not actually part of the liquid waste management plan, at least at this time.
I would love it if staff could confirm that, because the septage receiving is critically important for the rural areas, and we should be involved. Okay, thank you. Childcare, Director Bax?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. We had a meeting yesterday. It seems that Director White is very well informed as well, but I'll continue in this role.
Okay, and Seniors Planning Table?
We have a meeting coming up in January, and yes, I'll continue in this role as well.
Thank you. AVICC, Climate Leadership, Director Gabius?
Yes, happy to keep going. Could there just be an adjustment to strike out association of? It's VICCCL. There's no association in the title.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, good. We don't have a Ferry Advisory Committee the last time I checked. Director Stanford?
Yeah, there's various community outreach organizations that BC Ferries is accumulating, so I'm happy to be connecting any way I can on that file.
Okay, everything ferries is Director Stanford. Well, no. Perhaps we should take it off the list for now.
Sure, Chair. We'll strike it for now, pending any update from that organization.
Great. All right, Sunshine Coast Tourism, Director Gabius.
I'm happy to stay on unless someone has a burning desire.
Okay, and the Affordable Housing Society Intergovernmental Liaison Group, that's a lot of syllables, but I am happy to continue, and Director Bax. Okay. Accessibility Committee. That one has finished, has it not? Or there's one more meeting coming?
Thank you, Chair. It's not exactly finished at this point. It's ongoing. There's a plan that's to come forward that you'll see on an upcoming agenda in the new year. So I think at this time, for all intents and purposes, we should keep an appointee.
Okay, Director Gabius, you're good. If anyone else wants to be the alternate, I don't mind, but okay, it looks like I'm there. Chamber of Commerce, Director Stanford.
I'm happy to be the liaison. I wasn't aware that Director Bax was the alternate, and I will keep that in mind because there are occasional meetings I can't make.
Okay. And finally, HAT. And I assume that Director White is happy to continue. So that's it. That's a lot. So, all right. Is there a motion? Oh, look, somebody's making a motion.
Yeah, that the board confirm appointments of directors to the committees and organizations set out in attachment A of this report as discussed.
Right, and several seconders. And so I'm calling the question. Yes, Director Stanford.
Will these organizations be informed of any changes, or do we take it upon ourselves to do that?
Thank you for the question. At the conclusion of the meeting, once these minutes are adopted, the Office of the CAO takes care of liaising with all of these organizations to make any of the necessary updates and to ask any of the questions that were brought forward today.
Thank you very much. All right, so I'm calling the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Great. No opposition. Joint Use Steering Committee minutes of October the 14th. This was quite interesting. Is there any business arising from these minutes? I forgot to check who was. Yeah, well, they're there for information, so good to know. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say thank you to Director Gabius for representing the organization at that meeting. Director Inkster and I were both required at a different meeting at the exact same time, so, you know, between the three appointed representatives, we had no representation available for the meeting. So I'm glad that you were able to be there. And yeah, it's you know, a very infrequent meeting, but it's important that we continue to talk with the school board and whenever we can. Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right. Next up, communications 5.1, district student leadership team. I don't think we have, it's nice to hear from them, but I don't think we have any follow-up to that. Next one up is from the province about mattresses and foundations, and I imagine that same letter was sent to an awful lot of local governments across BC, all of us who are unhappy about the lack of an extended producer responsibility program. And finally, we have SD 46, External Ad Hoc Trustee Remuneration Committee. Any comments, thoughts, suggestions? Director Inkster.
This has come to our table as well, and it's been moved forward based on the chaotic last council meeting we had. But it's interesting because they're asking us to comment on remuneration, and it's in a sense complimentary to us to ask for our ideas and thoughts and volunteer time for that. Although I can't recall us ever asking the school board to sit on our remuneration committee, school board directors, so or trustees. So it's interesting. It's they're asking us, so should we? I think we should indicate some sort of courteous reply as to, you know, what our thoughts are and whether somebody would like to be part of that process.
Fair enough. I personally feel like I have enough on my plate at the moment. And Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I'm certainly not raising my hand to volunteer at the moment because, yeah, my plate is also full. But I did want to sort of highlight that, you know, in the conversations that I had with CAO about this, it really is like it's an external, it's not an SCRD appointment to a committee. So if my understanding is that the school board has budgeted like some small honorariums for the people that participate in this committee. But anybody who does volunteer, it wouldn't be eligible to claim expenses through the SCRD. Just to make that known for the directors, because it's not really an SCRD role that we're appointed to. So don't want to stop anybody from volunteering, but if that is a consideration, that is something that folks should be aware of. And like I said, I think, exactly, you can't claim mileage through the SCRD. They may have a process, I don't know, but they do have a small honorarium that's going to be provided to members of this committee. Thanks.
Thank you. So, does anybody wish to? I'm not saying anyone. Perhaps we could write back to the school board, thank them for their letter, thank them for, extending the offer, and say that we are not going to appoint anyone, and if anyone wishes to volunteer, they will contact them directly. Does that sound reasonable? Director Inkster.
Yeah, I don't really know what's going to happen next week with us. Some of the ongoings are fairly unpredictable lately. But I'm interested in either situation. I just, I think I have some good ideas on remuneration, so, yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it up to you to contact the school district. Thank you for your public service.
Yeah.
And do we need an actual motion, or have we sufficiently given verbal direction here? All right. In that case, I'm going to make a motion just to make sure it's on the books that staff respond to SD 46, thanking them for including us in their process, and direct that we will not be appointing someone to this committee, but if any of our directors wish to volunteer, they will contact the school district directly.
Could you just say that I'm interested?
Why don't you just contact them? Yeah. And that motion is seconded. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right. We have come to the end of the open agenda. We have no new business. We have a motion to go in camera, that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with section 91 ACK and 92B3 of the Community Charter. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Okay, there are no persons in the physical gallery, and there are no people in the online gallery, so we will go in camera. Welcome back to the dregs of the cow meeting for Thursday, December the 11th. We're done our business. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved, seconded, all in favor? We're gone. Goodbye.